Today on Sports Central, we'll be going over a college football game preview on one of the big matchups coming up in the Big 12 in Week 9 of this season, and that's going to be between Texas and Oklahoma State. And it's been kind of a weird season for both these teams. Of course, Texas was expected to be kind of in the same position where Oklahoma State is at right now. I mean, Texas was actually expected to be a top 10 team for the majority of the season, but Oklahoma State's definitely taken their spot there. We're going to see whether or not Texas can pull a big upset here in this matchup coming up on Saturday. And we're going to be going over a full college football game preview and prediction on this one here today, starting out with your team trends. And last week, Texas beat Baylor. 27-16 was the final score there, so it was a good win for Texas in the end. We also saw Oklahoma State over Iowa State, 24-21 was also the score there, which, I mean, Iowa State being a team that was ranked, I think, 17th last week. That's definitely the best win that Oklahoma State has had so far this season, and that definitely sets them in the right direction moving forward towards the rest of the season. So yeah, your winning streaks for both these teams. Oklahoma State's currently ranked 6th in the country. They got a 4-0 record, and they've got a 4-game winning streak. As for Texas, they're 3-2 overall right now with a 1-game winning streak. So Texas is trying to build some more momentum moving forward towards November and the rest of the season. Because, I mean, yeah, Texas, I think, is still a team that's got a lot of potential and upside. I mean, you got Sam Ehlinger at quarterback, who I think in general is, I mean, he's a great quarterback. He just does not have a lot of talent around him. And that's been his main problem over the past season, is just that he does not have the talent to work with for Texas to have a national contending season. And I think, I mean, they could easily stitch that up if it just, I mean, if they can get a big win here, that would really help them with their momentum, and really anything can happen past that point. So that's why it's such an important game for Texas here especially. But same thing for Oklahoma State. I mean, being a top 6 team now, I'd say Oklahoma State is within boundaries to possibly, or we could be talking about them in a college football playoff appearance. I mean, yeah, Oklahoma State's been having a great season so far with several really good wins, and Iowa State beating them last week was definitely a big addition to that agenda. This game's going to be on Saturday, October 31st, 4 p.m. Eastern in Stillwater, so Oklahoma State will be your home team here. Spread currently says the Cowboys by 3.5. ESPN FPI's got Texas actually 51%. That is a crazy stat line there. The ESPN FPI disagrees with the spread to go with Texas, 51%, and that is probably the weirdest ESPN FPI prediction I've ever seen. I mean, if you think about it, Oklahoma State's ranked 6th in the country right now. Texas, on the other hand, is completely unranked, and they are favored in this game by the FPI. Really surprising there. But the Vegas prediction does have Oklahoma State by 7, 33-26 being the final score there. Here's your stat comparison for this one. Texas currently has 45 points per game, 32 points allowed, so they've got a significantly larger amount of points per game than Oklahoma State does. But then again, they've allowed 20 points more per game than Oklahoma State has. For pass yards a game, Texas has 307. Rush yards per game, it's 174. Then for yards allowed, they allowed 253 pass yards and 130 rush yards per game. As for Oklahoma State, they got 28 points per game, 12 points allowed. So all around, I'd say probably they've got the better stat line there. It's a better ratio between points per game and points allowed. But they've got 203 pass yards a game, 216 rush yards, and then 176 pass yards a game, along with 127 rush yards. So all around, Oklahoma State has just got a much more balanced team. I mean, they've got Spencer Sanders at quarterback, who is a great quarterback. And I mean, the rushing game for Oklahoma State's been really good this season too. There's no doubt about that, considering they've got more rush yards on average than pass yards. So, yeah, Oklahoma State is a team that I think is pretty scary. You got to watch out for them moving forward, considering the amount of offensive talent that they've got, and their defense has been really improved this season as well. So, yeah, watch out for this Oklahoma State team moving forward. Here's the key points for this one. Oklahoma State is playing like a playoff contender. I'm pretty sure we're all aware of that. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that Oklahoma State is a contender right now. I mean, if they can just keep winning, and obviously, if they keep winning and they win out and possibly win the Big 12 championship, I mean, there's no way that they can keep Oklahoma State out of the college football playoff. So, I mean, it's not going to be that terrible of a task. I mean, the Big 12 this season really has been pretty messy. You've just got one clear-cut great team up there, and that is Oklahoma State right now. Texas still trying to build big wins, which this would be a huge addition to their resume there if they could get a win here, and this would also help them significantly with having a good end to the season and possibly setting themselves up for a decent postseason position, which I still think is definitely possible for Texas. I mean, they've got a good recruiting class. You got Sam Ehlinger at quarterback, who I think is a legit, I mean, he's a great quarterback. There's no doubt on that. So, I mean, if they can just build around Sam Ehlinger, and if they can just build some momentum here, and that'd be huge for Texas moving forward. Crucial game for both teams, though. Obviously, we're starting to near towards the end of the season, so all these wins for both of these teams moving forward are going to be really important. And so for Oklahoma State especially, I mean, if you take a loss here to Texas, I'd say your playoff chances are in the garbage by then. I mean, yeah, you can't take a loss like to Texas at this point. Like, I think Oklahoma State has to win out if they make it into the college football playoff, considering, I mean, right now in the college football playoff picture, we've got Alabama, you got Clemson, Ohio State. All three of those teams are probably guarantees, and then the fourth team is obviously a bit of a toss-up right now. But Oklahoma State definitely can make a run for that if they can just get these big wins against teams that they definitely should win to. So yeah, that's also why it's so important for Oklahoma State here. So I think Texas gets a win here. I'm actually going with Texas here, 34-31 being the final score. And I'm sure some of you guys are going to call me crazy for this one, and I'm probably going to get a whole lot of hate for it, but hear me out here. I mean, Oklahoma State is a good team, but the thing is that they've got a lot of close games recently, and I haven't really ever seen a very convincing win out of Oklahoma State. I mean, beating Iowa State last week was a great win. There's no doubt on that. But prior to that, I mean, they had a close game to Tulsa and all around. I mean, Oklahoma State, I think, is pretty vulnerable to a loss at this point in the season. I think they're going to take an upset at some point down the stretch going towards the Big 12 championship, and I think it's going to be against Texas. I think Texas comes into this game highly motivated. I mean, this is always a very intriguing matchup between these teams, and it's always really close as well. But I just think Sam Ehlinger and Texas, I really like them in this matchup. I think that they're going to go in and they're going to get a big win. And let me remind you, home field advantage is completely absent this season. I mean, considering there's no fans in the stands, or at least in the Big 12, there's a few, but hardly none are in the stands right now. We've seen away teams win left and right, and it doesn't really look like home field advantage is much of an advantage here this season. And so I think Texas, I mean, I really like them in this matchup. I think Texas is going to come in. I mean, they don't really have anything to lose at this point. They have everything to gain, is what I'm trying to say here. I think Texas is going to be highly motivated. They're going to get the win 34-31 over a great Oklahoma State team. And honestly, I think Oklahoma State's a great team. Don't get me wrong. Like, they've got a lot of good wins. I think that there is a good chance, I mean, especially if they can get a win here, that they could make a college football playoff appearance later on in the season. But I just think, I mean, Oklahoma State's not ready for that. I think Texas gets the win here in the end. I'm going to pull the upset for Texas. But do let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup. Let me know who you got and whether or not you think Texas can pull the upset. I would like to hear your thoughts on that. But then again, thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this preview, slap a like on it, subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel. I really appreciate that. But as always, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I'll see you all later.